Welcome to Sovereign Souls, a special podcast sponsored by the Spirit Release Academy with your hosts, Jonno Webster and Andy Porter.
In this episode, we discuss how to tell if you or someone you love needs spirit release therapy and its after effects.
I think SRT covers a whole kind of wide range of symptoms, really. So one of the first things that we can talk about, I think, is, if someone in your family, someone you love, or yourself, of course, normally not really for you, but starts to notice sudden mood swings, personality changes, people's behaviour changes. So when people have spiritual disruption in their energy field, of course, it has an emotional connection to their thought process, to the way they behave, to the way they exhibit themselves. So people around them tend to be the first person to notice the sort of personality changing and these kind of dramatic shifts in energy, conversation. Generally, if it's negative, people are going to come across as angry. You're going to find that they're quick to anger. They're normally quite kind of protective about their own self and like to get into difficult conversations. And they become very kind of concentric in themselves completely, really. And that portrays, for us generally, there's the first kind of clue that this could be a spiritual problem and there could be some spiritual interference that's starting to happen, which, of course, is the thing that we're starting to observe. So not that behavioural changes or mood swings, cover everything spiritual, but it's certainly a starting point to start to observe if someone in your family, your loved one, your partner, your friend, your children, people you work with, start to notice these changes in people around you.
And that's probably one of the biggest things about this work, is that it is other people that notice. It's very, very hard to self-analyze. Very, very hard to self-analyze. I mean, we've actually had some quite in-depth discussions with practitioners who believe that you could actually self-clear. And that's not something that we believe you can actually do. Because if you're having interference, whether it be a visual effect, an auditory effect, a thought pattern that's being changed, anything like that means that you cannot self-clear because you can't self-analyze under those conditions. So therefore, you have to have a third party who is distant from you go in and look at the energy from a distance, from a safe distance, and then be able to perform the clearing. So it's little things as well. Sometimes, I'm sure we've all experienced it. Sometimes you're talking to a group of people and the conversation you're having is very simple. And 3 out of 4 of the people heard exactly what you said and they understand exactly the way you meant it. But the 4th person heard exactly what you said and they understood it completely differently. And they saw a completely different vision of what you were saying. And that's sometimes because they have auditory interference that's interfering with the way they understand the words that's coming into them. So they do hear what you're saying, but they're understanding and they define the words differently, giving them a false perspective of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, really. Again, people feeling not like themselves is an often thing that we hear. There's that deep intuitive sense that something's not right, basically, and you kind of know something's not right in yourself. You can't quite put your finger on it, and you're not really able to observe effectively exactly what it is, but you know that there's some sort of external influence that's changing the way that you feel, changing the things that you think, and sometimes changing the way that you see as well. And as Jonno says, put different people in a room and have a conversation, and different people come back with different assumptions based upon the conversations that have happened. And of course, this is where there can be this negative spiritual intrusive element that starts to dictate and move conversations in completely different ways.
And that's the thing, the intrusiveness, intrusive thoughts, intrusive voices. These things happen. We've all heard of these stories where people are considered to be normal under whatever definition of normal it actually is, but then they have these thought processes where today they will commit suicide. They're feeling very low, they're feeling very heavy, and the voices they hear also are intruding in. So for those people, it's very easy to recognize. And sometimes, you can self-analyze that, because if you're hearing those thoughts and you're feeling those thoughts and hearing those voices, then you can get the reports done for yourself. But intrusive energy is not always in your face. Intrusive energy can be recognized more by your surrounding friends, your loved ones, and your families first.
Yeah, I think also one of the big indicators I've always found personally really is sleep. So if you look at people that have intrusive energy, negative energy around them, connected to them, nightmares are going to be very persistent in their dream state. So sleep paralysis, again, is another thing that's an extremely negative experience. When you can be lying in bed, you're in a dream state that's generally being manipulated by some type of negative energy, and then you find that you can't come back into your body. So you know that your body's lying in bed, you know that you're not spiritually connected to it, therefore you can't kind of make yourself move and animate your arms and legs and things, but you sort of feel almost as though you're hovering over your body, but you can't actually make it move. Now, it's quite a scary place to be. And I think I've experienced this a few times. I know it's not anything that you look forward to particularly. But again, for people that have this intrusive level of negativity in their life, nightmares and bad disturbed sleep and sleep paralysis are kind of indicators that something's not right, and you need to start to consider your spiritual protection and obviously invoking a spiritual clearing or cleansing with a certified practitioner.
Another aspect that we have, one of the more common ones that we have as well, is people that feel that they're not alone. People that feel that perhaps they're being watched, they're being listened to, they're being influenced. If we go to the subtle signs, it literally is just a feeling sometimes that they are just being watched. You might be walking around your home or whatever, and you got that feeling that you're not alone, and there is someone else there when you can't see and you can't feel a difference, but you just know that something or an entity or someone is also present with you. And the flip side of that is that this can go into a much more serious spiritual encounter where people experience sexual behavior, rape behavior, more physical experiences. And again, this is intelligent beings that, we've all heard of these stories. It's out there. We've had clients that have had it. We've had clients that we've managed to successfully clear from those energies as well.
I think another thing really from my perspective is sort of the disassociation, or what we consider to be zoning out. So again, moments of memory loss. We all have times where we can't remember what's happened, or disconnection from the present moment. Quite often when we're driving somewhere down a road that we drive every day, we suddenly realise that we've come to the end of the road, or we've come to the end of the freeway or motorway, but we don't really remember the journey. We've kind of zoned out in that perspective. So blackouts or energetic intrusions do come up for people that are experiencing some sort of negative intrusive aspect or some type of negative control, basically. And that kind of leads us on to like the fear of religious practice. So again, religion, even though we're not really religious, we don't consider what we do to be religious. Spirituality is its own energy from that perspective, really. But if someone has a negative attachment, a negative entity connected to them, they're going to push them away from anything positive. And there's certain aspects of religion that talks about these types of entities over the years. And of course, things like meditation, prayer, spiritual spaces, spiritual crucifixes and spiritual amulets that are used from a protection perspective will be rejected by some sort of overlying negative control, and that person will be pushed away from those types of spiritual practice based upon that understanding.
And I think lastly, talking about the way that this can affect you is, if you're going into hospital for an operation, this is something that's very common, because operations usually come with a general anesthetic, and that would mean that your consciousness is taken aside. And it's not uncommon at all for somebody to come out of hospital with a slight difference in their personality. In fact, I actually know somebody that came out of hospital from a heart operation with a completely new personality. They spoke differently. Their mannerisms were different. They went from being a heterosexual married guy with a family to being gay and losing the marriage, losing the family home. And I know that person. And we've all heard of people, perhaps in the press, when it's reported where someone goes in for an operation and then comes out speaking a completely different language. Again, so we would see these as jumpers. We see that the consciousness steps aside whilst the operation is going ahead because the general anesthetic has done that. And that gives an opportunity for an energy to jump in, an energy to jump into the transporter. The transporter is the physical energy, and they therefore have their jumper, which is the spiritual energy, connecting to the physical energy, and therefore having a life source to move forward. So this is something that we do here a lot, and certainly our work covers a lot of people that are either preparing to go into hospital or have just come out.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jonno. I think children as well, lots of children suffer with night terrors or imaginary friends that seem to be too real. They can talk about them in a very kind of real way. You can see children that are very young are still quite connected to spirit. It's only through the kind of the school system and the kind of reprogramming away from spirituality to a certain degree that kind of disconnects small children from that perspective. So younger children that seem to be talking to their imaginary friends, generally from a spiritual perspective, we kind of know that's not the case. They are talking to spirit, they're talking to spirit they can see. And again, telling them that it doesn't exist and it's not real doesn't really help from that perspective. But again, if you've got children that are struggling with sleep, night terrors is a persistent problem, then again, I would recommend that you contact a certified practitioner and invoke some sort of intervention from that perspective to bring that child back to a sovereign space and to clear the house, clear the room, clear the area.
That's it, exactly. And the results of the work, usually it's pretty much immediate. Usually people would feel the results of the work instantly. As soon as that negative energy has been cleared and pushed back and exited, the person should kind of feel pretty much an immediate response. Although sometimes it does take longer, that's because there has been a disruption in the energy fields, and that energy field now needs to settle down, and that can sometimes take just a few days.
I think that, from my perspective, that probably brings an end and conclusion really to this particular episode. So we've covered quite a large area of what we do from an SRA perspective across these 6 episodes. There's lots of information that's been provided. Jonno and I are taking some time to look at the next season, effectively, and the things that we're going to cover in the next season, and we're quite excited to hear from you. So if you're interested in the work that we do, you're interested to connect with us, to talk to us about the things that you do and how that might connect with us. If you're into research, if you're an academic or someone in the medical or scientific community that has an interest in spirit possession, in remote spirit release and the things that we've been talking about across these episodes, then we'd be really keen for you to kind of connect with us, and we can look at some type of collaboration, because we're looking now to move this work out into a wider audience. I think Jonno mentioned earlier that we're looking to connect to prisons. We're looking to connect to veteran charities and organisations and work with soldiers and people that have extreme trauma, PTSD. Yeah. So again, there's a whole, and of course the mental health area is huge really from our perspective, and we're looking to provide and perform interventions for people that are really suffering.
So we hope that you've enjoyed our first series. For us, it was important that we kind of lay the foundations of our work, just to give you a brief understanding. To be honest with you, when we're talking about 40 plus years of experience, our foundations could have gone on for about 3 or 4 series, but we hope you've enjoyed our first series. Our next one will be shortly coming along, series 2. Watch this space. It is on its way. And thank you so much for your support. We've had some wonderful feedback coming in about this episodes and this first series that we've done. And we really, really look forward to our second series coming out soon.
Thanks, folks. Goodbye.
This podcast is sponsored by the Spirit Release Academy. To learn more information about the Academy and their ongoing courses, please visit spiritreleaseacademy.com.